mFlare is a plugin produced by Motion VFX. Not a lot of people know about this because the company makes products primarily for Final Cut Pro X and Apple Motion. mFlare offers a variety of presets and its own interface for lens flare creation. Let's take a tour of the basics. So mFlare is another standalone lens flare package available from motionvfx.com. I've been searching my effects and presets for mFlare from Motion VFX, and if you have it installed, you can follow along. I'll select the effect and apply it to the clip in my 6.5 composition. You can see that the lens flare gets added, and with the effect still selected in effect controls, I can play with its on-screen controls to move where the center point of the lens flare is located. Like other lens flares, I've got some controls here for the global controls of the lens flares, such as you can see down here. If I wanted to switch the color, I could select the eyedropper, maybe sample a color from this window over here. I'm going to make sure that global color is activated, and it will take on that color. Seeing now that my lens flare is way too bright, I'm going to bring down its brightness quite a bit, just something about 50, and leave that as is. Now, another favorite of mine in the mFlare effect is to go to the edit section, and by clicking there, adding the checkbox next to the empty square, the mFlare interface launches. In the mFlare interface are a bunch of options. One is, first of all, if you look up here, are various objects or elements that we can add to our existing lens flare, or we can go into the presets tab and look at a bunch of amazing lens flare presets, which have textures and a ton of, in some cases, animated elements attached to them. If I work my way down, I kind of like this L Dune lens flare. I'll click on it. It gets added here to this window. If I want to see it against the background, I can just click on this Show Background button here at the bottom. We can see here that the video in our movie gets displayed, and I can easily and quickly interact with my lens flare. Now, depending on what's selected down here, so here's the global controls for the overall lens flare, and as I scroll here, you can see all of the elements that compose my lens flare. I can select all of these elements and basically switch them separately. Under global controls, we'll find some cool animation things as well. So I have the global controls selected for this exact lens flare. And there's an area here called dynamic animation. If I click enable, it's basically going to set it up that as this lens flare approaches the border of the screen, depending on what's selected down here, it might increase in size or brightness, the lens flare. So let me have it increase in brightness to about 50 as it approaches the border, and also change color. I'll have the color change to a more vibrant orange. You can see here as I play with the lens flare, boom, gets a lot more brighter in color, as well as its brightness changes. Now, while I didn't show this in the previous plugin, this is something available in VideoCopilot.net's optical flares, so keep that in mind. But a nice little animation trigger to have there, and we've seen that in some of the other major plugin packages such as Boris and Sapphire. The dynamic edge or center triggering is also available here in mFlare. I'm going to hit OK to go back into my project, and I can see here that the lens flare is definitely way too intense. I'm going to bring it down its brightness to a value of about 60. You can see there that sits nicely in the window. There's different things I can do. I can add actually some tracking information to it, so I could use lights in my scene. I can use luminance or an object's position, and that data can be fed to mFlare so that the lens flare moves with the scene. I can add textures inside of the edit interface, and I can add some random flicker as well. So let me go up here to the flicker section, add a speed value of 50 and a hole value of 100. If I hit the spacebar to play this back, we've got now some flickering going on there in my lens flare as I go throughout my scene. So a standalone plugin package available for both After Effects and Photoshop. Check out mFlare, some of its presets, as well as some of its offerings there within the effect controls.